ready?
Oh, we're ready.
I am.
I'll talk to you.
Good evening. The March 11th, 2019 agenda meeting of the Milltown Borough Council will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Here.
Councilman Farkas?
Here.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Here.
Councilman Legati?
Here.
Councilwoman Mayer? Here. Councilman Revelinsky?
With bells on.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, we have 6 present.
Will the clerk please read the meeting statement?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular business meeting of the Borough Council was provided by the adoption of a resolution and the posting, filing, and forwarding of a copy of the same to the official Borough newspapers, Home News Tribune, and Star Ledger publishing companies on January 10, 2019. Public participation in this meeting will be permitted during public hearings and after the agenda of scheduled matters has been completed.
Okay, please rise for a salute to our nation's flag, preceded by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item for discussion this evening is update on NJ Waterworks.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I just wanted to update everyone. We were holding meetings with various committees for Jersey Waterworks, and they did have a great attendance, 500 people for the round table, and discussion of lead in school and how to tackle that. What they're doing is they're discussing ways to make things available for the school districts for, either testing, also funding in order to switch out those lead services in the future. So this was their first meeting on February 26th. They'll continue to proceed, as well as this month they will have the discussion for the lead in service within the municipalities and how we can go about assisting municipalities with people changing them in the towns. And that's what I just wanted to update you on.
Okay, any questions for the councilwoman?
I just have a comment. I know that the Milltown schools tested their water a few years ago after the Flint thing, and there was no findings for lead.
There was 2 for the fountains, but they switched them out.
Correct.
So
they were the old fountains that were never used.
Correct.
Right. So that's why they came up, but there's no findings there.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, next item, New Jersey Future Development Toolkit.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I put this on here. There is a green infrastructure for developers or redevelopment areas, and that information is available on a small card like this. This is similar to it. I wasn't able to locate it for the meeting. This is for a different one, which I'll tell you later in a moment. And what we can do is provide that link to developers, divide it to the planning board so that they have an understanding of what's coming down the pipeline in terms of the MS4 permits for DEP. They are using green infrastructure as a recommendation, and they're looking to do that as a more of a mandated in the future for municipalities to, discuss with developers when they're doing more than just a house, like small development areas. This particular card is New Jersey Future. It is the municipal toolkit, so we could utilize it within our borough, at our parks, any areas that we might, which we're tearing down the electrical substation. It'll be an idea for planning in the future. So I will provide that information to the strategic planning board, as well as, planning committee, and the planning board as well. And that's what information I wanted to bring up on those 2 things.
Any questions for the councilwoman? Seeing none. Next on the agenda, Municipal Outreach Toolkit.
She did.
Yes, I did the outreach toolkit for the green infrastructure.
Covered
Right.
2 in one shot.
I was going to say my hands are getting greasy with all this.
This for D? That's it.
That's it?
Yeah, I already
Okay.
mentioned it. So.
By title. Okay, any questions in regards to the Municipal Outreach Toolkit? Seeing none. Next on the agenda, JWW Summit.
The JWW is Jersey Waterworks Summit. It's going to be Friday, June 14th, and it's an all-day event. It gets our committee members are up to, over 500 members now throughout the municipalities, experts in the fields, as well as universities. So if in case you wanted that information or would like to participate, you can certainly do so, and I can send you that information. Any of the professionals as well. You do get CEU credits. They do provide that. Also, it helps any municipalities to get their points towards certification for sustainable Jersey.
Any questions? Asset management and finance.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's something that I asked to have put on. We had a very good Utilities Committee meeting the other night, and part of the discussion was the, I don't have my notes, Water Quality Act. Which,
Water Accountability Act.
Well, accountability, right, sorry. Thanks, Mike. And part of that requires some items that need to be done quite soon, one of which is the asset management. So I asked, and how we're going to finance that. So I asked Mike to speak about that, if he could, please.
Sure.
Thanks.
The EPA and the state of New Jersey DEP have enacted what's basically called the Water Accountability Act, obviously through the state legislature. And one of the things that they're requiring is municipal systems, large and small and medium. Yours qualifies for small because you're under 10,000, to prepare certain procedures, operations, and basically what's called an asset management plan. An asset management plan is a list of a series of requirements that the state has, so that, for example, you list your equipment. As you know, you have a pumping station at Elkins Lane, you have 3 pumps in the pumping station, you have a standby generator, you have chemical feed system. What they really are trying to do is to get water systems all over the state to assess this equipment and determine what its useful life is. In other words, you have another 20 years, 30 years, and then list these useful lives in a report that they have access to. And the reason that they are trying to do this is to assess what this infrastructure needs of the whole entire country are. So when EPA basically requests dollars from Congress, they have a record to show what the needs are throughout the country. In there, there's a lot of background information about your system, where your supply is. You have a fairly straightforward system because you don't treat water. You buy water from New Brunswick, it's already treated. You basically bring it in and distribute it throughout the system. So it's a series of requirements. Your system is, as I said, not as complex. The state has been proposing to finance these through the Infrastructure Trust, the IBank, as they're calling themselves now, and with up to $100,000 to offset the costs. And this would be done as a principal forgiveness, which is their way of saying that it's a loan, but they basically forgive it. Fortunately, in Milltown, we think we could probably do this for less than $25,000. We actually lowered the number from the other night, mostly because of the background information we have on your system, and because, as I said, you're not as complex. But what happened, you'd see a spreadsheet when it was all done, and it would give you the list of equipment. You obviously have a water tank, and you have those types of things. You have a certain amount of distribution mains and valves and hydrants, and those would all be cataloged in the plan. And you'd get a copy of a book. It's about a half-inch thick, and basically it's a guide for your water operations staff to follow. Getting back to the Accountability Act, there's a requirement that you exercise certain valves and hydrants depending on the size, and they're really drilling down at this point to make sure that you have backup systems and that your valves and hydrants are tested on a regular basis. Fortunately, because your system has smaller valves, I think there's 12-inch. I think Mr. Eckert said he had somewhere less than 20 12-inch valves. They also want us to GPS the valve, which is a geographic position system. You fortunately basically have a water system map done on GPS, and we can basically take that in through the GIS system and bring all your valves in at some point. So you've made some steps over the years to have things in place that really put you a long way to get this thing done. So it's not a big lift, but it's sometimes this work has to be done. And they don't appear to be granting any extensions for small systems. So I think the date is due sometime in April. Now, we believe we can get it done for you. There is a certain amount of work. I don't want to make it sound like it's so easy, but there is work to be done. But because we were involved in the design of your pumping station and your water transmission main and the water storage tank, and we're painting it now, we have a bunch of information ready, so we can put it together fairly quickly for you. But you don't have, it's due, I think, next month. So it can be done, it's just a matter of getting it done.
Any questions for the engineer?
So is that something that we have to put a resolution on for to proceed with that, or is that just, we give the green light on that? How does that work, Randy?
Well, we'll take it into consideration for the budget, and it's CME that'll be doing the work.
Yes, that's who, yeah, we do.
So you already have the engineers appointed, so we could do a resolution at the next meeting with a not to exceed amount, so we know. And I could talk to Mike more in depth and get those details.
Right, because I think it was April 19th it was?
That's right. There's a possibility that it may be able to be funded through the water storage tank, as I said at the meeting on Thursday night.
Right.
What happens there is that the state, when you know there's IBank proposals, there's a large amount of financing that's done with the application. And then there's a line item that it's called planning and design, and we have not eaten through that number, both from legal or accounting or from engineering, so there may be some funding in that project. They have told me before that we could finance that plan through there. What we have to make sure of is that they'll still fund the cost for you. That's the thing. So that, and as I said, principal forgiveness is important. It's not, we don't want necessarily to be a loan. We want it to be paid entirely by the state. So that's the only connection we have to make. We did make calls to them, but we did not get that verified, confirmed. But there's a good possibility we can get right through the tank, which requires, basically we're authorized already, so it would not require a big issue.
Doesn't part of the Water Accountability Act or for this plan also require that we put a certain amount of dollars into the system to address issues determined by the plan within the first number of years in order to receive that full benefit or principal forgiveness?
Well, they are requesting that when you prepare the plan, if, as you know, you've seen the flyer they sent out, we're going to have to do some type of project. I think the obvious thing is we painted the tank. Even though it was
I was going to say, would that count, even though we started doing that before?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think not the tank.
Second question I have on that is, we're talking about water, and the government is always, likes to give us a regulation, then we have to kind of pick up the pieces. So in an effort to be proactive, should we be doing something in regards to a wastewater accountability or asset management plan? So we look at our pump stations in town, our force mains. I think we have, is there 2 or 3 pump stations in town? We have the force mains. Our manholes for the I&I that we have and development of a TV and routing plan so we can fully inspect our wastewater system as well. I feel like that would be the next step.
There's no question that they don't stop at water, but because the Water Accountability Act requires it, that's why we're before you tonight. We don't, push things on the borough. There's no reason to do the wastewater management. It's a good idea, be a great idea. We think it's important to have, but it's something that no one's mandating or indicating they're going to pay for. Now, what happens on the IBank when you do a sewer project, the new ones, they require that you do asset management for just that portion of the equipment. Let's say you did the force main, they require an asset management on force main only, not on the whole entire system. Our recommendation is you do the whole thing at one time. Remember, doing the water first is going to minimize the time even further on the sewer because the mapping begins to get smaller. There's no requirement that we map cleanouts, or there's no real valves, as you know. So it's a little easier on the wastewater on that side because you don't have a wastewater plant. But you're 100% right, it is going to be something that they'll find some act in the future, but to the extent that we can minimize your costs, that's what we do. So.
Any other questions?
Just I have one. Mike, does a resolution at the next council meeting give you enough time to get this done?
It's going to have to. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, next on the agenda, miscellaneous engineering items.
I'll defer to my colleague for the remaining report. It's okay with you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, colleague.
Thank you. We've prepared the contracts for phase 2 of the Wilson Avenue improvements. We've sent those over to the contractor. Hopefully they'll get us back them soon. We can get them to execute them. Public Works, contractor is doing preliminary work for the water tie-in to Washington Avenue. They're also preparing to complete the remainder of the water pipeline work within the driveway. The substation demolition work has started. They've started removing materials from the site. And lastly, the water tank scaffolding is almost completely erected. They're transferring telecom antennas to the scaffolding now, and there'll be a field meeting this week with John Eckert to discuss grading the tank, which hopefully will happen by the end of the week.
Any questions for the engineer?
I have one, this was discussed the other night, is that we have upcoming requirements to meet with DEP to discuss our lead action plan. And I think one of the things we're going to discuss tonight is the utilization of, I think it's, oh, Mike, I'll let you speak to it, but I know we were going to ask you possibly to submit a letter to the state requesting grant funds to replace lead services, so that that letter can be included in a revised lead action plan that for meetings with the state.
And we have been in the process of trying to schedule a meeting with the state, and I think at that time also we would present a letter requesting financing. We know that there is a program out there for municipalities with less than 10,000 connections or 10,000 customers, but it ties into the income level. So I think we'll go through and at least get a low interest loan. We may not be able to get a grant for them, but we're going to try and see what we can do. Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, close miscellaneous engineering items. Audience comments, please state your name and address for identification of the record. With that, I open audience comments. As a reminder, these are only comments geared towards things discussed in the agenda meeting. Seeing none, close audience comments, accept the motion for adjournment.
So be
Second.
Motion by Council President Dixon, seconded by Councilwoman Kerber. We adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're going to adjourn for about 5 minutes. Good evening. The March 11th, 2019 meeting of the Milltown Borough Council will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Here.
Councilman Farkas?
Here.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Present.
Councilman Legati?
Here.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Here.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 present.
Thank you. Will the clerk please read the meeting statement?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular business meeting of the Borough Council was provided by the adoption of a resolution and the posting, filing, and forwarding of a copy of the same to the official borough newspapers, Home News Tribune, and Star Ledger publishing companies on January 10, 2019. Public participation in this meeting will be permitted during public hearings and after the agenda of scheduled matters has been completed.
Thank you. Please rise for a moment of silence, followed by a salute to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first on the agenda this evening is public hearings, and tonight we have a public hearing scheduled for ordinance number 19-1470. The ordinance has been published according to law. Copies have been made available to the public prior to this evening's meeting. I would ask anyone wishing to speak in favor of or against the ordinance, when recognized, please state your name and address in the microphone, and to Senator Rude for identification on the record. Will the clerk please read ordinance number 19-1470 by title?
An ordinance of the Borough Council of the Borough of Milltown amending the redevelopment plan known as the Milltown Ford Avenue redevelopment plan.
Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask the council for their consideration.
Make a motion that this ordinance be adopted on the second and final reading and be published according to law.
I second.
I have a motion by Councilman Legati, seconded by Councilwoman Kerber, that the ordinance be adopted on second and final reading and published according to law. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Okay, next we have audience comments and questions on resolutions and bills and claims listed on the agenda. If you have any comments or questions, please use the microphone in the center of the room. Give your name and address for the record when recognized. Remember, comments and questions are limited to the resolutions and bills and claims listed on the agenda. With that, I will open audience comments. Seeing none, I will close audience comments. Next on the agenda is bills and claims. Will the clerk please read resolution 19-078 by title?
Authorizing the payment of bills, claims, and statements against the Borough of Milltown in the total amount of $2,437,509.91.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that the resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, seconded by Council President Dixon, that the resolution is adopted. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Okay, next we have reports of standing committees and introduction of resolutions. A consent resolution has been prepared to cover the 6 resolutions listed on the agenda. If any member of the council wants any resolution acted upon individually, please give me the number of the resolution and it will be removed from the consent resolution. Hearing none, will the clerk please read the consent resolution?
Whereas pursuant to the rules of council, the council may establish a consent agenda for any regular or special meeting, and whereas the Borough Clerk has posted a consent agenda for this meeting, now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor, Borough Council of the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, that the consent agenda previously prepared by the Borough Clerk be approved without the necessity of having the individual resolutions read by the Borough Clerk.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Make a motion that the resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Legati, seconded by Councilman Revelinsky, that the resolution is adopted. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Okay, next we will hear the report of the Department of Finance, Administration, and Planning, chaired by Council President Ronald Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we're setting up our meetings with department heads, with our CFO, Mr. Randy Barr, and we are attempting to schedule one for next week, which we're going to make sure that everybody's in line for. And once we finish all of our interviews, we'll be sitting down to go over and finalize the budget. Is that correct, Mr. Barr?
Yes.
And that is my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next we'll hear from the Department of Public Safety, chaired by Councilman Nicholas Legatti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have the Milltown Police Report, monthly report. Between February 6, 2019 and March 4th, 2019, police have received and answered 1,472 calls for service. Police conducted a total of 482 motor vehicle stops, which include special traffic enforcement details. 87 radar details were conducted in various locations during this period. Police responded to 23 motor vehicle accidents and made 19 arrests, which include shoplifting, drugs, DWI, domestic violence assaults, theft, and warrant arrests. After a month-long investigation, Detective Sergeant Fama arrested a man who had been openly dealing narcotics around town. The man would meet customers at several locations around town and distribute drugs. The man was arrested and charged in possession of cocaine packages for distribution. Despite several warnings advising regarding the removal of vehicles from the snow-covered roads, the Milltown Police Department has issued approximately 50 summonses in violation of Borough Ordinance 7-10. This ordinance is in place to ensure effective snow removal and safer commutes. We appreciate the residents who cooperate and make the snow removal and traffic safety function much more efficient. Milltown Police advised any parents dropping off and picking up their children at JK School in the Obey local I'm going to start that one again. Police advise that parents dropping off and picking up children at JK School obey traffic laws and be patient and courteous to other drivers and residents. Chief Brian Kennelly. Okay. Now, continuing with the police report, I'd like to congratulate EMT Lindsay DeFalco and her husband, Milltown Police Officer Bill DeFalco, on the birth of their first child, William Jeffrey DeFalco. Everyone is doing well, and we look forward to welcoming William into our community. Continuing with the police report is a personal request from myself, a social media request. The police chief is the person responsible for putting out public safety nixles for the Milltown Borough. Please be respectful of his decision-making. I have full confidence in Chief Kennelly's professionalism and decisions on what nixles get sent out to the residents of Milltown. My last item, Mr. Mayor, is a letter from the Milltown Senior Citizens Club. It's Dear Nick, I am writing on behalf of the Milltown Senior Club to thank you for your acquisition and delivery of our new vans. I know that it is not easy sitting at meetings trying to get the biggest piece of the pie for your constituents. But after seeing the new vehicles, I am sure you feel your efforts were worthwhile. Finally, after years of living with a bucket of nuts and bolts, we now have safe, comfortable, and dependable means of transportation. As they say in the movies, I thank you, our members thank you, and our kidneys thank you. Bob Skarzinski, president of the Milltown Senior Club. And that was part of the HUD grant money that we received that paid for our 2 new vans. I'd just like to say thank you to Bob. I appreciate it very much. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the Department of Utilities, chaired by Councilwoman Trina Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said before, we had a very good meeting last Thursday. I will have more of a full report about it at our next meeting. We still have some action items and some follow-up to take care of, but I will have a more detailed report. One of the main thing we wanted to take care of tonight was the deadline that's looming a month from now. There will be some trickle down after that. As Mike said, the exercising the valves will, according to Mr. Eckert, require us to purchase new valves, because if they haven't been used, they will be broken. So it's going to be a big financial undertaking to do the next step of that as well. And we also have some other finance things to talk about that I'll actually bring up in old business. Mr. Eckert also informed me, as Deanna said, that they are doing the demolition of the old substation. The utility department is monitoring that. Another thing I wanted to make a note on is that we talked about at the last meeting. I see the Joffrey Avenue road hole in the street has been fixed, so I want to thank the homeowner for taking care of that. It looks like everything is dry over there now. And I believe that's it. Well, I'll have a full detailed report of our meeting and our next steps at the next meeting. So that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the Department of Public Works and Recycling, chaired by Councilwoman Dorianne Kerber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along with all regular curbside collections, Public Works has the following report. Tree trimming has taken place on Harkins, Durst, and Janet Court, and this will be ongoing with the tree trimming, weather permitting. Public Works staff underwent forklift training and certification, and this was provided at no cost to the borough by the New Jersey Department of Labor. Pothole repair is ongoing. The Welcome to Milltown sign was blown down during a recent windstorm and has been repaired. It also has been reinstalled. Trees fell on Renault and the corner of Garver and Highland during the windstorm. These trees were blocking roadways and were removed. A no parking sign has been installed on John Street. Dangerous tree was also removed on the corner of DeBonis and Carina. Preparations took place for both snowstorms, including installing plows, filling the salt truck, sending out nixles, as well as updating the website. Snow removal took place on March 2nd and 3rd, also carried into the March 4th. All borough lots were plowed and salted. All municipal sidewalks and crosswalks were cleared, as well as salted. Public Works would like to thank all residents who complied with the borough snow ordinance and removed their cars from the roadway. A dangerous tree was also removed at JFK Drive, and both the Public Works Department as well as the Utility Department assisted with that removal. It was also a dangerous branch on Desmond. Please check milltownnewjersey.org and Channel 15 for Public Works information or updates. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the Department of Environmental, Health, and Social Services, chaired by Councilman Randy Farkas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The March membership meeting for the Environmental Commission is Tuesday, March 19th, 7:30 p.m. at the Milltown Senior Center. The keynote speaker that night is Stephanie Murphy, chair of the Rutgers Soil Testing Laboratory. The title of her talk is Soil Care for Sustainable Landscapes and Climate Mitigation. All are welcome to attend. A new water monitoring program begins in July, macroinvertebrate testing, and some additional chemical testing. Organized by Mr. Matt Milburn, we will be gradually building a larger team to conduct this important activity for most of the year. If you are interested in getting involved, please contact Matt Milburn at mmilburn92@gmail.com. Area cleanups, likely to be in South Brunswick or New Brunswick in April on a Sunday at approximately 1 p.m. The 2019 Farrington Lake cleanup is also likely to be in late April or early May on a Saturday morning. Nature walks. Next walk is likely to be a Saturday in April, probably starting around 12 noon. And finally, the Earth Center Spring 2019 programs. Events are from March 6th to April 20th and are free and located at the Earth Center unless noted otherwise. See www.middlesexcountynj.gov or call 732-393-5262 to register. The Earth Center is located at 42 Reeve Avenue in South Brunswick in Davidson's Mill Pond Park. 2 events that are especially recommended: backyard composting on Saturday, April 6th at 10 a.m., and introduction to vermi composting Wednesday, April 10th at 6:30 p.m. And that concludes the Environmental Commission report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the Department of Recreation, chaired by Councilman Richard Revelinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along with daily operations of deposits, registrations, billings, etc., the Recreation and SAC departments has the following. SAC reminders: don't forget to sign up on the Borough website to receive update alerts. We are still in the process of securing our license revisions for the Parkview Summer SAC program, as Parkview School will not be available, and we are trying to get all Summer SAC programs at the Joyce Kilmer School. Summer SAC packets will become available in late March. We will have them up on the website and send out a constant contact as well once completed. So another reason to sign up for those update and alerts on our website. We are still accepting employment applications for adult SAC aides and for both age groups for summer SAC and school year SAC. Recreation information. We are still accepting all part-time seasonal employment applications for the Albert Avenue Summer Rec Program and the Borough Pool. Even if you have worked for the Borough in previous years, you must reapply. All applicants must be 15 years old by March 31st, and we have extended the application deadline to Friday, March 15th. Please note that we follow the New Jersey state minimum wage. There is ongoing registration for all spring programs and sports. A constant contact has been sent out as well for your convenience. Registration deadlines are nearing. Spring soccer will begin on Saturday, April 6th. Spring tennis is set to start on April 23rd and is open to children 3 years old to 14 years old. Fundamental Fours T-ball is set to begin on May 4th. Pool membership sales will begin in May, and we will update the website when we have a date for confirmation. If you would like to receive recreation, SAC, or pool newsflash notifications, I'll say it again, please sign up with your email on the Borough website. If you would like to receive constant contact, please contact the Recreation Department and provide us with your email. The Recreation Committee has been rescheduled to Wednesday, March 20th, 2019 at 7 p.m. We are in the process of possibly moving the Rec Committee meetings to Tuesdays for those volunteers. I'd like to add that we had a meeting last week that was very productive, and I want to thank the members of the public who did attend for the Recreation Subcommittee meeting. Some of the items that discussed were plannings for this year's events, ways to improve our website and have some additional information out there. We touched on finance as well, and one of the issues that's going to be coming up is an introduction of Ordinance 1471 regarding the summer SAC and school year SAC fees. Lastly, the survey for participation is an issue that we discussed at the meeting so that members of the public and people who sign their children up or are involved in the recreation programs can feel that they have a non-judgmental way to respond and give us some ideas for improvement and their thoughts on how the programs are operating. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is introduction of ordinances. Tonight we have 2. Will the clerk please read ordinance number 19-1471 by title, please?
An ordinance of the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 8 of the Borough Code of the Borough of Milltown entitled School Age Child Care Program.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this ordinance. What is your pleasure?
I move that this ordinance be adopted on first reading, published according to law, and that a public hearing be held at our next regular council meeting on March 25th, 7 p.m. in council chambers.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, seconded by Councilman Legati, that the ordinance be adopted on first reading, published according to law, and that a public hearing be held at our next regularly scheduled council meeting on March 25th, 2019, 7 p.m. at Borough Hall. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Legati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Will the clerk please read ordinance number 19-1472 by title only, please?
The ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real property, a portion of 72 Washington Avenue, Block 73, Lot 3.01, by the Borough of Milltown.
Okay, you've heard the reading of this resolution, of this ordinance. What is your pleasure?
Move that this ordinance be adopted on first reading, published according to law, and that a public hearing be held at our next regular council meeting on March 25th at 7 p.m. in council chambers.
Second.
I have a motion by Council President Dixon, seconded by Councilman Revelinsky, with very forcefully, that it be published, adopted on first reading, published according to law, and that a public hearing be held at our next regularly scheduled council meeting on March 25th, 2019, 7 p.m. at Borough Hall. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Dixon?
Aye.
Councilman Farkas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kerber?
Aye.
Councilman Nagati?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mayer?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, we have 6 ayes.
So moved. Is there any old business to come before the council this evening?
I have a few questions, comments. Councilwoman Kerber talked about the trees. I was driving down Milltown Road on my way to Route 18 today, and East Brunswick was doing tree trimming and removal there. How are we doing with our contract?
It should be out there next week.
Yeah, good. But and how many do we lose? 5?
What do you mean, how many?
In the storm, like how many you said in
Oh.
your report, like 4 or 5 that we took down already?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And then I also been hearing tree services within the distance in the borough, so I'll be driving Wednesday to make sure they're not on the list. So there was been people taking trees down, not us.
Ah,
So I did hear that
okay.
throughout the last 3-4 weeks.
The other question I had for you, Councilman Revelinsky, is when you talk about constant contact for email, is that a paid service?
I believe it is.
Yes.
So-
Yes.
It brings me to wonder why we're not just using the website and the news flash.
I think we're in the process of trying to transfer everything over there. There's been some disappointment by residents that we're no longer using the Facebook page, so we're trying not
Correct.
to disrupt too much at one time as we transfer everything over. And at least with the constant contact, it encourages people to reach out, and then we can try to encourage them more to use the website instead of the constant contact.
Right. So that leads me to my question of how is the website coming as far as all the departments? Maybe, Gabriella, you could answer that, because when we passed the social media policy, we sort of indicated that people should go, the first point of contact should be the website. However, some departments haven't caught up to use it as much as others, and so is the expectation that that should be, all the departments should be fully functional soon?
I don't believe all of the departments are fully functional yet.
Okay.
I'm
Because,
not sure.
you know, we had said even last year, once everything is up and going, that we would share with the public, okay, make sure you get your news flash, here's where to go. But unfortunately, we can't do that if all the departments aren't on using it to the full capacity. And I know people have been asking, looking for information, and we ideally would say, okay, go to the website. So I hope that sooner rather than later, they would all be on there. I know there's a couple that really need to get on board. So I'll bring up also what I was going to talk about with the utilities. So, and this is something that we mentioned earlier in the year, because at the end of last year, Councilman Revelinsky did a nice presentation about the privatization of water. We discussed it at length at the Utilities Committee meeting. We got a lot of good feedback from all of the professionals that it's a long, arduous task. However, the first step to do that is to have a valuation of our system, which according to the auditor could be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 to just start out to see all of the assets that Milltown has in their water sewer system, and have it before we can even, decide what to do next. That would be the first step to do. So I had mentioned this a couple months ago, and we had a short discussion, but I'm bringing it back to the council now because I think at one point we're going to have to say, okay, do we want to even do this? Do we want to try and fix what we have? Do we want to spend the money to see what we have? I mean, that's not my decision, nor just the utility commission. We can make our recommendations. However, I would, and also we have to interact with the finance committee, and they haven't even gotten their budget together, because a lot of the questions that I asked Mr. Stankiewicz, our auditor, he couldn't really give me a full answer as far as how it would affect the budget, because the budget isn't completed yet, and he didn't have all the numbers regarding the water sewer fund.
I have a question for Mike. In terms of your statement, you did a packet for all of us for the DEP regarding the new stormwater MS4. Does that also include what was discussed just now about an assessment, a full assessment of the whole system inside the ground, inside the pump stations? Is that all inclusive, or is that mandatory through the DEP? That's what I was wondering.
What I think Councilwoman Mayer is talking about is when you do an assessment of the value of your system, you first take a look at the replacement costs. In other words, and we have done these before. You take a look at the length of your water lines, you take a look at the age of them and what the replacement value of them is. And then then a financial person, which is the bulk of the work is a financial person, not so much engineering. We can tell you the length of the pipes, the approximate age, the age of your tanks, your one tank, your second tank, age of your pumping station, your pumps, and then the financial people take it from there, and then they do their financial analysis on it, which basically you've heard of present worth versus net worth, or not net worth, but present worth, and then you do a financial analysis, see what the value of the pipe is because it's 50 or 60 or 100 years old. So that's basically what happened. This is really only on the water and sewage system, if that's what you're going to do.
Okay.
Stormwater is a little different.
Because I know the AWWA,
Right.
the Association for Water membership, is going to have on March 21st a whole big thing on their conference regarding asset management and finance for your water system.
Yeah, and we are down there at that conference. It's something that I'm a member of AWA for, I don't know, 40 years, I think. I was very young when I started. So it's, you know, we're familiar with that. So it's an agency that really governs a lot of the requirements we have. But I think that what you're talking about when you start looking at valuing something for sale, similar you would do with your house or your vehicle, but because of the water system, the age of the line isn't 5 or 10 years old. It's 100 years old. And the DEP now has made an edict in the Water Accountability Act that says after 150 years, they're requiring to replace your water line. So that's a new thing that was struck with this act that I can tell you we have never seen that before, where they actually took a stand that said 150-year replacement life in all your. So that would be now a way to assess, you know, if you've got 50 years, you're 1/3 of the way through already. So that's basically how that would work. So the numbers are easy to go through from an engineering standpoint, but the problem is the financial analysis and what's the real worth of it.
You know, what's the market value? And then I think also, and I don't mean to cut you off, just to continue on with that discussion, was the work that we discussed, possibly asking you guys to perform for us in regards to the asset management plan is actually a good stepping stone in that it gives us a lot of the background information to perform that valuation of the system, because it'll truly map out and have all those details in there, as well as with our 10-year capital plan to evaluate the costs moving forward and of the projects that we know we have to undertake. Now, Mr. Stankiewicz, when he was there at the meeting the other night, he did give a brief idea or an understanding of our current debt service, which drives the majority of our rates at this time, is our debt service and our operation costs, with the fluctuation, of course, from what New Brunswick provides. But given that we haven't gotten final numbers yet from New Brunswick for previous years, and those still need to be ironed out, that's one of the things holding up our budget analysis for this year, because we're still waiting on New Brunswick, despite reaching out several times. So maybe doing it in a public forum will give them a little kick. In any event, yes, the valuation of the system includes both the physical and the financial, in that if you remember some of our discussions in the past, there's several ways to go about the system. You can do a operations where the borough is still responsible for all of the financial backing in order to have someone else basically maintain our system. There is similar to what Edison did, which is I forget the exact term, but it's essentially a long lease where a private entity would take over full operation and the financials in doing the improvements to your system, but you would retain the assets and receive it all back at the end of the agreed upon term, or you have the outright sale of the system. So those are all the things that a financial analysis to be done during the valuation really brings to the table. It's not just, yes, we have old pipes, and yes, we have to dump in $8 million of work or $20 million of work, but what would that cost the borough, and then would that be attractive enough for someone else to come in and possibly want to do an operations concession or outright purchase? But currently we're looking at, if my memory serves me correctly, our debt service doesn't drop off till about 2025 by about $100,000. Or is it $200,000 in 2025 for water sewer and $100,000 annually for electric, which combined would bring us about a borrowing capacity without increasing our debt service beyond where we are now, about $4.5 million worth of work, but that is 2025 or 2026 before we'd be able to do that. So we're still looking at, without putting the burden on all of our ratepayers, very limited options on what we can do work-wise to improve the system until that point. So that's why I think I think it's good for a discussion at this point to really consider spending a few dollars to get evaluation done in order to understand where we're going, because obviously we've got some time here before we can go down the path of reinvesting in the system and shelling out the money and then passing the burden on to our taxpayers.
Well, or alternative, well, that was part of the discussion. The other part is to try and save, cut back somewhere else, to try and put some aside for when we can actually do something. The debt service right now is untenable to take on a big project. And the big project, according to our engineer, is the forced main, which we have had 3 small breaks over the last year, each at a cost of $70,000 to repair, which hits us on not on the capital side of the budget, but on the operating side of the budget. So that's where, according to Mr. McClellan, the big need is, and that is the biggest ask dollar amount for that. However, according to Mr. Stankiewicz, right now in our water sewer fund, the debt service accounts for about 1/3 of that budget. So that precludes us from looking at doing the projects such as a forced main, water lines, things like that, unless we look for other options, grants, money from the state, something if there's, more push for infrastructure. But, and one of the other options discussed was to, privatize it. However, they said that, you're going to pay for it regardless of which way you go, and the system needs work. I mean, it's like somebody that's coming in, like you said, to buy your house. You need to get a value of it, but are you going to buy a house that's turnkey, or are you going to buy a fixer-upper? If you have a $12 million force main that needs a lot of work, then that's going to play into their valuation. But before you can even do that, before you can sit down with your potential home buyer, you need to know what your house is worth. And according to the professionals, that's the first decision that we have to make. Do we want to do that? Can we afford to do that? And do we want to spend $50,000 to $100,000 just to take that out and try it? I mean, we may do that, and we may find out that they don't want to pay what we think it's worth. So that's what I'm bringing to the council. Do we even want to try that, or do we want to try and fix what we haven't fixed yet? I mean, that's where I'm asking to do that.
It's a lot like that show on HGTV where the woman says, okay, I'll I've got $100,000 to fix my house, and while we're doing the work, we're gonna find another house equal to that. The difference is we don't have the $100,000 to fix our house.
Right, right, because
So-
I mean, yeah, that's a lot of money just to, you know, take it out for a test drive, so to speak. I'm mixing the house and the car metaphors, but, you know.
I for one think, I'm for it, simply for the fact that, at least by doing it, by having that professional study, we would know where we stand. We would have, you know, some pretty accurate data to make a determination on whether or not we're gonna foot the bill by doing improvements, or are we gonna go down a path of trying to privatize and put someone else on the hook for improving our system. But without at least thoroughly evaluating our system, which I don't know if we've ever really had done before. To my knowledge, we haven't. We don't know what the right direction is, so before we go and spend some more money and take out loans and put ourselves on the hook, we should know what the best bang for our buck is gonna be.
So is that something we have to present to the Finance Committee, Mr. Barr, or how do we even go about? I mean, well, okay, so now we've heard from two. We've heard from me and we've heard from Councilman Revelinsky. Anybody else have an opinion about this?
Well, I have an opinion, but my opinion, it needs to be couched on where we stand with the budget. Because if we don't have the money in the budget, you know, is the choice, you know, laying somebody off or possibly somebody losing their job or to do this? I mean, we need more information to make this decision, in my opinion. We need to know where we are in the budget process and what the budget looks like.
To add to that, we did have a brief discussion regarding the rate increase last year, and we did achieve the goal in the 6-month time frame of making up the monies that we set out to make up. So I know that we now have additional funds this year, and we've had some additional breaks in town and some unexpected expenditures, but I would hedge my bet on saying that we would have enough in the fund, although we should plan for that money rather than hoping it comes in. So.
And I think what's been said before, we're still waiting for New Brunswick's response. Is that correct, Mr. Boyle?
That is correct.
Well, that's just about the rates. That's not,
Which will
Oh.
drive the budget.
right,
Yeah,
right,
which is
but
gonna drive
that's,
the budget, so we can't give you an answer on the budget till we get those responses.
Any other old business?
I have one more quick question. I just had notes of stuff that we didn't follow up on. Did we ever find out about the OEM coordinator? Remember we had a question about it on a statute? Did we nail that down?
Yeah, I believe it was the state police had said that he approved our OEM coordinator. And that was it, and as long as it's okay by the state police controller, then we're good to go.
So the state police trumped the statute?
Well, there's a residency requirement in an appendix. It's not in the actual statutes, it's in an appendix that has a residency requirement. So I was asked to look into this. There's also 2 statutes which would allow a municipality to waive a residency requirement.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Mike, I just have a question based on your comment earlier. When I was talking about the asset management plan and whether or not it would be worthwhile doing for sanitary sewer, you had mentioned, and this is just to kind of make sure I was understanding correctly, that the state will pay for an asset management plan when you have, for sanitary sewer, when you're doing a specific sanitary sewer improvement. Did I understand that correctly? So if we were gonna do the force main, they'd allow us to do an asset management plan and pay for it, or principal forgiveness?
They would require.
Require it. Is there principal forgiveness associated with that?
Yes, there would be,
Okay, so.
up to $100,000.
Now, in regards to that planning, does that include the preliminary design phase and evaluation, or? Because we've already started discussing, you know, possible routes for a force main, what it would cost us, and I'm wondering if it would behoove us to submit a request to the state for sanitary sewer asset management plan under principal forgiveness for that force main, since we're already starting to really look at it and I think spend some money on its consideration.
As you pointed out earlier, you have to lead to a project, so that But what happens, you do the asset management plan, but it has to lead to doing a project. The reason I'm combining it with the water side, usually I think water and sewer, I take and separate them, but the water side, the way that I would say to try and get the funding is because you're gonna get the tank paintings done already. With regard to the sewer, if you decide to do one for the sewer, and it's a combined 100,000, you'd have like 75,000 for the sewer, which is plenty. You then have to do a project to get them to finance it. So if you did it for the force main, then you'd have to go through and do the force main, and they would put the principal forgiveness in that package when you file for that project.
Well, and that's kind of looming over our head now, especially with Ford Avenue approaching pretty quickly as to progress there. There's going to be some additional work that needs to be done. If I'm correct in my memory, 350 units didn't initially require replacement of the force main according to capacity.
That's correct.
At that time.
Except for the gravity section.
Except for the gravity section. So if we did some sort of analysis or asset management plan for the force main and then did the gravity section, that could be the lower cost there of a project that falls under that.
That's right.
Asset management.
That's right. And remember that the iBank loan says, in order to, one of the conditions of the loan that the administrator and I have to sign is that there's either an asset management plan in place for the project, or there's one going to be prepared for just that portion of the project, not the whole town. So the trust is required only per project, whereas this, and you got to separate again water. The Water Accountability Act says, okay, no, we want it for the whole entire water system. There's no sewer system accountability act yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not too far down the road.
But considering that the gravity portion is the extension of the force main,
Yeah, that would
is there, I mean, you know, they're one and the same. We could just say that, you know, according to finances, that we may have to cut the project shorter.
That's right.
Down to just the gravity section, or perhaps take on the whole thing.
That would work. Yeah.
But we talked about that. I mean, so we don't have a project, because unfortunately, we can't afford it right now. And we talked about splitting it up into thirds, and it's still 4 million, right, Mike?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Plus or minus. But
So in other words,
which way you go.
Mike's cautionary tale is be careful, don't try and get into a project that maybe you can't tackle just yet.
Right, but I'm thinking in the sense of, we know how long it takes for us to kind of get ducks in a row and get something on the books for construction, that if we're looking at almost 10 years before we can do a decent-sized project, if Ford Avenue comes around before then, we're gonna have to do that portion, so maybe it's time we look at that. And then one of the other things we discussed at the meeting was possibly separating our water and sewer funds so that we can truly see what our costs are for operation and maintenance of water and what is required for that system versus the cost of operation and maintenance for our sewer program, so.
Correct.
In the finances. So I think that maybe that's something that, especially now as we're diving into the 2019 budget, should we be looking into further?
Yes, well, yeah, that's why I waited till the next time, because we still have a little more information to gather. So by the next meeting, or definitely by the meeting after that, we will have a full accounting, and we will have our next Utilities Committee meeting, and then we will make our recommendation based on having all of the information. But nobody else wants to chime in on the spending the $100,000? Mayor, any opinion on that?
Spending the $100,000 for?
To value our system.
I always like making plans. I think plans are great. I like spending money on plans, because when things come down the highway and all of a sudden money's freed up to do a project, and if you got plans, you're the first on the list. But that's, you know, that's my 2 cents on it.
Good. Okay, great.
So do we have a consensus then?
I don't know. Well, we have a plan in case we have money someday. So.
Well, you remember a few years back, under the Obama administration, there was a, you know, looking for shovel-ready projects. And we didn't have any ready. But some
No,
places.
but this isn't even shovel-ready.
Oh, I understand.
This is just to say how much it's worth.
What's it worth? Yep. Oh, I get it.
So, I mean, that doesn't even require a plan. That requires a phone call.
Yep.
You know, one way to maybe help this is, after we get done with the asset management plan, we'll have a list of the length of your water lines, the sizes, and we can very quickly tell you what the replacement cost, the present day replacement cost would be. That would give you an idea of what the value system was if you were to construct it brand new. Now, that's not the total finance, but maybe that'll get you a little ways towards where you need to be without any more expenditure than you talked about already tonight. At least gives you a rough idea. In other words, what would it cost you to replace? We can tell you what your water tank would cost because we're building tanks in other places. We can tell you what it would cost to put the pumping station in the transmission main. So we could probably give you a rough idea of what the replacement value is as brand new. Now, that's not, as I said, the financial part is a part that, beyond engineering. So, but at least they'll give you a rough idea.
And in the meantime, we can reach out to some industry experts and try and find out a budgetary price for this evaluation regarding the financial aspect and the bonding agent or special counsel. I believe there would be associated with that as well. So
Right.
that encompasses all in the 100,000.
Is that something that finance would have to do?
It could be any of us. Reach out to some of the towns that have done it
Well,
and find out how much they paid for the attorney, the appraiser, the financial advisors to see one of these through.
Mr. Stank would
get a
get
better
a couple
idea.
of names of firms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any new business this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have one, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I guess this question would be reference to Mr. Barr. Based on some of the amounts that we are paying to, I guess the architect is Cipriano, is that correct? Sambrino. Based on those amounts, is it out of the question to ask them for a monthly report and not get charged any additional money? Because those are big numbers. I'm hoping that they would supply us with a monthly report. I would really be interested in seeing that as well. I'm sure the rest of council would as well.
I mean, they're out there doing the inspections. We could get a monthly report with them, not a problem.
They send bi-weekly reports.
They send us bi-weekly reports?
They do. If you'd like, I can send, Brito sends bi-weekly reports.
Oh, they do
Every 2
bi-weekly?
weeks. I think it's every 2 weeks they send a report.
And it
roughly.
doesn't cost us any more money to get that from them?
That's
It
part
costs-
of, I believe, the monthly.
It costs us $8,000 a month.
Yeah.
But we're
But
already
that's-
paying.
But we're
what
already,
we're
yeah,
paying.
correct.
I would like, if you wouldn't mind, I think all of council
Yeah,
would
'cause
like
they-
to see that. If we're
well-
already paying for it, why not?
Yeah, I have them. I'll send them out to council in the morning.
Thank you.
Well, Nick, Councilman Ligotti.
No problem.
One of the other things too is we only awarded the special projects coordinator for so much time, and I think that time is about to expire, especially as the buildings start going up. Then that becomes probably a relay of power or authority over to.
Architect?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I
That's
think
fine.
that's why we picked 6 months, because that was mostly sites work at that
I
time.
gotta tell you, the reason for my asking for that is coming from a non-construction background. I think the more information I get, I may be able to understand a little bit better.
Sure.
Any other new business?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to remind everyone that March 20th here in Borough Hall, so that's a week from Wednesday night, we will have our strategic planning committee meeting. That will be where we will break the plans that we talked about last time into goals. So I hope it's open to everyone, all public. So that's Wednesday, March 20th at 7 p.m. here in Borough, in council chambers.
Okay, any other new business?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I didn't mention, we are going to have a New Jersey Clean Communities cleanup from 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. on April 13th. Hopefully it doesn't rain, it's good weather, and we will have lots of activities available, planting the planters, and also cleanup in various parks. And of course, at 12 noon will be the traditional Easter egg hunt from the Milltown Lions Club at Albert Avenue Park.
Great. Audience comments. Please, when recognized, please state your name and address for the record.
Steve Gregus, 25 Lincoln Avenue. Just a few things I want to bring up. Lost my train of thought here for a minute. Okay. First of all, with the weather getting nicer, I plan on reaching out to the clock company to get the town clock serviced and the face light fixed. It's been a while since it's been serviced, and we still have a sizable amount of money left in the fund. So I figured it should be under $1,000 to get that done. Second, last year I had reached out to council and I had asked about some help as far as doing some repairs on the museum. This year, we plan on replacing the front porch, and we already found a contractor who's going to do it, and we're going to pay for that out of our funds. And we still want to repair the porch roof and the soffits. And again, the amount we're looking for, we have a price here from a contractor. We're looking for $4,700. And, you know, I'm hoping that maybe, you know, the borough can help us out because, you know, we're putting some money into the building. We want to keep it. We want to keep it up because, you know, you neglect it, it's going to fall into disrepair and it will just end up costing more. So I'm hoping that, you know, the town can find some money in the budget to help us out. Two other things I just want to bring up. I know last year there was a big stink about the water rates going up because of a big overcharge from New Brunswick. And I was just curious, once that gets paid off, can we possibly see a reduction in the rates? Because I know that's the reason why it was raised, so can we possibly see a reduction in the rates once that bill is met?
I know back when we were forced to raise them, I pledged that we would definitely revisit it. While we still are waiting for those final numbers to come in from New Brunswick this year to balance and see where we landed, along with the debt service, we should have that answer for you.
Okay.
It's something that I know council as a whole is looking at. How much, what percent, and if it's possible, we'll be looking into it and see if we can.
Okay, okay. Just one more comment I'd like to make regarding Ford Avenue. And this project has been going on for so long, and with all the nonsense going back and forth, what I would love to see get done over there, I would love to see us go to the owner and try to convince him to sell it to the county as open space, because the one thing that I don't like about this project is, and this is going back from when this first started, I know the borough is going to be responsible for utility upgrades over there. And the biggest utility upgrade over there is going to be the main sewer line that goes to New Brunswick. It's not big enough. That whole thing is going to have to be replaced. And I remember a number was thrown out back at that time, about 1.6 million back around 2000 to replace that. Who knows what that is now? So unless the developer is going to pay for all utility upgrades up there, let's just make it open space and make it a big park. Thank you.
So, Mr. Gregus, I wanted to just weigh in because I'm the utilities chair. When we did have when we met on Thursday, and since you and I have known each other since we were kids, I will say that we asked the auditor, I asked, are we going to be able to cut the rates and give people money back? And he said, doesn't look good. So the answer is that we made up the shortfall. We have a lot of debt in that fund, and he does not see a way yet. I mean, we don't have definitive numbers, so I can't say for sure, but the honest answer is that it doesn't look good for giving back some of the rate increase.
Used for what, paying for the other projects that are going on with the water line?
Just to keep it running.
Just to keep it running.
Yep.
Well, I think some of that stuff went to back bills from New Brunswick and the re-up charges that come from MCUA. When they look at your final analysis of flow at the end of the year, they adjust the numbers and say, okay, this is what you owe us for the year based on your flow. So that money accumulated over some time. We lost part of the pilot program money that was coming from over by Acme and Target. We were getting about $50,000 a year into our water sewer fund from that. And that stopped. Those payments have stopped according to the contract with them. So
is the town still looking to possibly looking at another company for the water?
That's what we were kind of discussing earlier.
That's what we were talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, you know, when you have a 100-year-old system and you have a force main that's having a break and it costs $70,000 to fix, that's exactly what we were talking about. That, if we had a capital project that could fix that, we wouldn't have these things.
I see what you're saying. So basically, instead of dropping, you probably have to raise it again to do so.
Well, we hope not, but I would just say that he specifically, that was the first thing to ask. Okay, we made it, now where are we going? And, you know, we don't have anything definitive, but I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that we're going to be getting some big cut this year.
Steve, I had one more question for you, just out of curiosity. When you want to do the awning over the roof and the front porch, is that anticipated to be done at the same time as doing the porch replacement?
Well, we're gonna do the porch replacement regardless.
Right.
But we can,
what are you
we can
looking
only do, that's what we can afford.
What are you looking for time frame on that?
I'd like to do this year, I mean, as far as the roof, before winter.
No, well, I'm saying that the porch, just so.
Porch, I'm hoping, maybe May? We're just getting our monies together, so.
Okay.
We got cash, I think we have one C, it's maturing in May, so we'll have that money then, so, at least when the weather's nice, so.
Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? Russell?
Good to see you, Mayor.
Take your time.
Good evening, Alan Godber, 4 Fern Place. I guess I'm speaking mostly about the Watershed Partnership this evening. I want to thank Councilman Farkas for mentioning the talk next week, the Tuesday the 19th, right? Dr. Stephanie Murphy, I'm very impressed with her. She came and spoke at an event at the planning board in East Brunswick, and she's very knowledgeable about a lot of things. So she volunteered to come and teach us about soils, and we'll see what she's going to cover. But we mentioned 3 things which related to sustainable landscapes and climate mitigation. So please come and join us at that at Senior Centre, 7:30 p.m. next Tuesday. But another issue that came up, I don't know whether some of you, I know that Councilman Farkas was at this meeting back in February. There was a meeting called by the Mayor Cohen of East Brunswick, and he had a total room full of people. This was to do with the Middlesex County landfill, which was, as probably a lot of you detected, putting out all kinds of terrible aromas in November, December, and so on. So all those people showed up there, and the utility spent more than an hour talking about how the system is operated and so on. And most of it sounded pretty good, except that clearly there's some problems they have, and they've got a lot of people living close by. One of the things that shocked me, the data that he came out with, was that he said that Middlesex County, for every homeowner, for every person, not homeowner, every person living in Middlesex County, they collect £4 per day per person that goes to that landfill of trash. Now, I was totally amazed, £4 per person per day. It's all right. So they got us thinking about, well, some of that we could do something about, like the organic materials that could be our vegetables, fruit, nuts, all the kinds of things that tend to get thrown out but don't have to be thrown out, could be composted, that we should do something about it. And we talked about it in the Environmental Commission. It was kind of a unanimous view that, yeah, we should do something about this. And I talked to Mayor Cohen about it, and he said, yes, I'm very much in favour of this. So we'll do a joint operation. So the idea is East Brunswick, the Watershed Partnership and Milltown Environmental Commission is going to try and have an event to teach people about how to do composting at home and how, spread the word, it can be done at all kinds of levels. So I tried to make this happen this month. Unfortunately, the lady, Deanna Miller, who is very good at this kind of thing, she thought she was available on Wednesday next week. It's a good job she wasn't, because you're going to have your meeting Wednesday. So it's very likely going to be May at this point, because I want to make sure that the mayor's involved as well in East Brunswick, and they've got complications all the way through April. So it's likely to be probably the 3rd Tuesday in May at this point. But in the meantime, as Councilman Farkas mentioned, there are events going on at the Earth Centre to teach people about composting. There's 2 specific events, and we put that in the mailing I sent out yesterday to the Watershed Partnership people. It's on the 6th, Saturday the 6th, I think, and Wednesday the 10th. Yes. And you can go down there, free events down at the Earth Centre to learn about that. So then hopefully we will have an event in May, and we'll make sure everybody knows about it. East Brunswick Mayor's Secretary said that they would send it all out on Facebook, so we'll get a lot of people come, I hope. I don't know why we're not all doing this. We found that several of the people in the Environmental Commission have been doing this for years, decades maybe already. So we were thinking at least we could reduce that £4 a little bit. Now, it doesn't mean that's the whole of what we should do, but it's a start. And then maybe Council would like to think about what other things we can do to other things that go out in trash. Maybe we should start thinking seriously about how we can reduce what comes from Milltown into the trash there. Because they told us that they've got plans for that landfill till 2030. Beyond that, there's no legal decisions about what's going to happen. So that's not that far away.
Not at all.
So I thought you should know about that. And, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Russ Einbinder, 220B South Main Street, Milltown. I'm here for a couple of the hats that I wear. I'll start off with the best news. If you saw it on Facebook or on Channel 15, you see we now have our Grand Marshal for the July 4th parade and events this year, Pastor Rich Wire, who happens to be retiring this year, so it was obviously an appropriate year to consider him. He was nominated by a bunch of people, and the committee voted him in, and it seems like what I've been seeing on social media, it seems like it might have been a pretty good choice, right, Rich? Yeah. Okay. That's that one. And also the other thing is for the Chamber of Commerce, we're going to have our business meeting, business social hour tomorrow again at the Garden State Bar. But if you could, Councilwoman Kerber, if you could remind us, do you remember off the top of your head, I don't have my sheet with me, I forgot it, which people have the food drive going, which stores?
Yes, we are doing a food drive at A&M Vacuum, Provident Bank, Carney Bank, also at Dr. Chacon's across the street,
Right.
and one other location. Oh, Milltown Pharmacy.
Right. And there might be one or two more that might still get in.
Right.
But the point is, we're going to do it to about April 15th, about just before Easter. This, other people do things like around Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is a time of year they really still need help with the Middlesex County foods. And so if there's anything you can do to help, there's lots of lists online. I'll have it on the channel as of tonight, which is the other thing I'm going to talk about in a second. And please help out because Lord knows there's a need for it. And the other thing is about the TV station. I spoke to Gabriella recently, and we got together, figured out a way, it is not that hard to do, it's just a matter of getting it done correctly. The TV station now is based on Google Slides, which is sort of like PowerPoint in the cloud, okay, for those of you that are not familiar with that. So basically anything I do there instantly changes. I don't have to worry about saving it, reposting, or any of that nonsense. So it's also a live website that's always constantly changing. So what makes it easy is to put a link or what's called embedding right on our website, which Gabriella did this past week when I gave her the link. And now, if you want, the social media complaints you guys are hearing, I hear it just as much as you do. And I do know that this is not 1996 anymore, okay? I'm not the first person to get the call from the superintendent anymore when school's closed, okay? Which is okay with me, by the way. But there is a need to get information out there to people. And I'm not talking about the Nick Solers from the chief or something. I'm talking about, when is the next fish fries and where, when is the Easter egg hunt, when is this, when is that, when is this. We don't have that on our recreation stuff. We need to get that out there. So the TV station does that, but we only have a limited amount of people that really get Cablevision and Channel 15. So this is 2019, we need to be on the web with it, we now are. And the reason I'm saying it and spending the time saying it is you can do it on your phone too, guys. I mean, if you go right to the Milltown the milltownnj.org, and you go to the part under community, all right, there's a drop-down menu that says Milltown TV. It takes you to the page, and Gabrielle put it right up there. There's two links. There's a link on there right to the YouTube page, which has this and every other meeting and the basketball game from the school the other night. All that stuff is going to be there. And anything you want to see about Milltown, what's going on, as long as I keep getting the information from the different people in town, I'm going to keep on putting it up there. You can see it on your phone, the slideshow right there. The most up-to-date information that we have available is there now. Okay? Yes, we want to improve on it and get things out from departments with more official stuff, but as far as community events and anything that they want up there, it's there now. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Houston. John Collins, 39 Southbrook Drive. I had a question for Councilwoman Muir.
Yeah.
Before we spend the $50,000 to $100,000 in valuation, have we looked at any interlocal agreements with East Brunswick about water sales?
No. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I've had this for, since January, and it's not only just the sales. We buy our water from New Brunswick. We're talking about the operating of our system. So in other words, we're talking about the pipes, the pumping stations. It's what's in Milltown.
The infrastructure,
Correct.
right. But I mean, the sale itself, that's where we seem to be running always into a problem. Since I've been a resident of Milltown, we've had a problem with New Brunswick water, overbilling, underbilling. I mean, that's why one of the guys down there shot himself, because they're unethical business practices.
Well, what we did was we had a utility meeting with all of the professionals, and we discussed what Councilman Revelinsky had introduced when he was the chair of the Utilities Committee, which was the privatization of water, not whether it was going to go to East Brunswick, North Brunswick, New Brunswick, but to a private company. And that's where the valuation discussion began.
So, I mean, we could technically run our own water department and then do as an add-on cost after we buy it from another town.
I don't follow you. What
In
do you
other
mean buy it
words,
from another town?
We wouldn't buy it from New Brunswick, we could buy it from East Brunswick, because I remember.
You're not talking, so we're talking apples and oranges. I'm talking infrastructure, you're talking about actually buying the water.
Right, the water itself, and then run the water utility itself.
One of the issues.
That's different, because what we're talking about is the valuation of the system that we have to distribute, to the pipes, all of that. The water privatization, that's a whole different thing as to where you actually get the water, whether it's New Brunswick or East Brunswick.
Well, it all falls under the same umbrella. Right now, we're kind of married to New Brunswick because New Brunswick both supplies us with water and charges us sewer rates based on how much water we procure from them.
Right.
East Brunswick, we do have an interconnect. I believe East Brunswick buys in bulk from the Middlesex Water Company, but East Brunswick operates its own system.
Right.
They just have a different source.
Right.
Middlesex Water Company, when I had met with them last year, and they came in and did a little spiel about privatization, they indicated that they'd be able to provide us through East Brunswick.
Right.
But I think to your initial point, East Brunswick or anyone like that, we haven't reached out to do any sort of interlocal agreement because the belief is really that it's all about economies of scale, and if East Brunswick's going to do a big project in East Brunswick, then Milltown ratepayers are going to wind up paying for that, as opposed to it being East Brunswick comes in and does some big projects in Milltown to get us on the right track, and their residents are going to pay for it. So at least with privatization, the company itself has a name and reputation to uphold. So when they do a project, they're looking to make sure that project is good for all of their ratepayers, as opposed to the governing body in East Brunswick taking a hit for spending $8 million on Milltown's force main or water main.
Right. What I was saying is you could buy the water from East Brunswick, because
we could.
All that eliminates is by just buying it from New Brunswick. That's a totally separate discussion than the valuation.
And the only problem that we'd run into is that New Brunswick would then want to charge us on our discharge flows in sewage that still pass through them, unless we went to the MCUA directly with our sewage. And if we do that, you're going to see the costs of infiltration and inflow into our system, because it's an old sewer system.
Right.
And water running in through manholes, and people who have their downspouts and sump pumps tied into their drains in their homes, their sewer system in the homes, we would likely see an increase in cost from New Brunswick. Even if we went directly to MCUA, we'd probably see an increase in cost from them as well.
Right.
So the procurement from a source for water doesn't solve the problem of us still having to discharge, and still having to discharge our sewage to New Brunswick, which is why one of the options now, looking at the force main being so old that it will likely need full replacement unless we did some sort of cured in place or we're able to increase capacity, is that we can go to New Brunswick, the existing route, go to New Brunswick through a new route, or possibly go all the way to the MCUA, that's the most costly route.
Right.
The option with that would be to speak to our neighboring communities and see if they needed any additional force main capacity that they might be able to help, share in the wealth of building a new main going out to the MCUA and some of the costs in there.
Because I know we do have some interlocal, there's houses over here in East Brunswick that come through Milltown with their sewage, so we could maybe, expand the interlocal agreement and see what we could do with that, because I remember when we tried to sell the electrical system, and that was totally, like, how do I say, foolishly done, because you can't sell something to somebody where they can go out and lose all their customers the next day. And I don't know who was in charge then, but I'm sure he didn't realize what he was doing. But I was just saying maybe an interlocal is where we should go with this before we start spending money.
Well, we weren't planning on spending money. That's where we were taking the pulse of what we were going to spend money. And I think unless, we find out, I'm sure East Brunswick charges for water. I don't think they give it out for free. I'm sure New Brunswick charges for water. They don't give it out for free. So regardless of where we get our water source, we're gonna have to pay for it. The problem is what do we do with the infrastructure that has been neglected year after year after year after year, with a capital plan that was provided by the engineers over 10 years. However, nothing has been addressed as far as the water lines or the sewer line. So we're just talking about the water that's putting in is not the issue that we were discussing. We were talking about the infrastructure.
Well, I don't want to negate the efforts of the past. I mean, we did, quite a bit of cleaning and lining. It took a while to get the water tank painting project up there. We've done some improvements to the Elkins Lane pump station for water.
Mike,
We've had some work.
drop in the bucket, right?
Excuse me, I'm speaking, Trina. Thank you. I don't appreciate the little side comments over to the engineer. We've spent millions of dollars to rehab our system. The problem is that the majority of our system is so old that we still need to invest millions more.
Exactly.
It's not that no one did anything. It's that what we thought we could afford to do and did a good job doing still is not enough. That's the issue.
If we say that we've spent, what, 2 or 3 million over the last few years out of a $20 or $25 million, I would say that's a drop in the bucket. I'm not saying we haven't done anything, but I would say that what we have been presented with from the engineer, we have not even begun to tackle. And we're gonna pay, we don't have our own water system, so whether we bring it in from New Brunswick or we bring it in from East Brunswick or North Brunswick, that point is moved. The point is how do we deal with our infrastructure problem, and that was the crux of the meeting that we had last week, and that is why we addressed your suggestion to privatize it. And if we are going to do that, that is what is going to present us with a $50,000 to $100,000 bill. If we don't want to do that and we want to try and fix our own issues, that $50,000 to $100,000 comes right off the table. Because we are still going to be doing the asset management plan, because we have to present that to the state for the Water Accountability Act. So that is exactly where the Utilities Committee is starting, and we will keep doing that, and we will get them more information about what's going on in the budget, and then we will talk about it more going forward.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else, I will close the public portion, open up to council comments.
Yes. Go ahead, Rich.
No, I've been talking enough. Your turn.
Okay. Oh, boy, did you make a good comment just now. Just one comment. We won't meet until March 25th. Just wanted to wish everybody to have a safe St. Patrick's Day on March 17th to all the families in Milltown. Thank you.
I'm glad I let you go first.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Mayor's comments. I will accept the motion for adjournment.
So be it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Good night.